nicotine has some sort of a nootropic benefit to it? Not encouraging people to smoke, but you could take it in various forms, particularly gum. I know people take it in gum just for the nootropic benefit of it.
I said to my doctor, I said, is it okay that I have nicotine? He's like, are you smoking? I said, no. He's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I take Nicorette. He goes, oh yeah, that's fine. Like he didn't even have a problem with it. No.
Yeah.
But nicotine itself is a powerful agent. It also can offset age-related cognitive decline. Not entirely, but it makes the brain work better.
Okay, so clearly there is a nicotine hype going on out there. And if you are anything like I was and are considering utilizing nicotine, you might want to watch this video first. In this video, we are going to go over the evidence that is out there regarding nicotine as a potential nootropic or cognitive enhancer. We will go over the ideal protocols if you're actually going to utilize nicotine. And at the end, we will go over my own personal experience with nicotine. So, let's go. So first of all, what is nicotine? Nicotine is an alkaloid produced mainly in plants. It is actually found in tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers, and of course, tobacco. In nature, nicotine is actually a pesticide, and its mechanism of action is overstimulating the nervous system of insects that ingest it. It overstimulates them to a point of paralysis or potentially death. Nicotine has actually been used for hundreds of years by farmers as an actual pesticide. But how does nicotine work in humans? So humans have nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the brain and other parts of the body too. Nicotine basically attaches to these receptors and starts to stimulate them. This results in increased alertness, improved mood, and enhanced attention. It also increases dopamine, which plays a role in nicotine's addictive nature. So nicotine can actually be toxic to humans. In extreme doses, it can even be lethal. So why do we actually think nicotine can be healthy for humans? It seems that this trend stemmed from studies done on smokers, which statistically show that they have a much lower risk of Parkinsons, Alzheimer's, or dementia. So basically, if you were to get the normal population and the smoking population, once the data was compared, it seems that the smoking population had less Parkinson's, dementia, and Alzheimer's, which is quite fascinating, right? It's worth pointing out that when it comes to Parkinson's, there were a few studies that gave Parkinson's patients nicotine patches, and this, at least based on these studies, did not show a slowered progression of the disease. So it could be that the study was limited, but it could also be that the nicotine prevents Parkinson's and not necessarily cures it. So when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, there is actual science out there stating that certain patients were administered nicotine intravenously, and they did show improved mood, improved attention, and better memory recall as a result. There were studies done on individuals with MCI, which stands for mild cognitive impairment. In some studies, these individuals were given nicotine patches, and this resulted in cognitive improvement. So worth noting that although nicotine showed cognitive improvements in Alzheimer's or dementia patients, we still need better science showing that it can actually prevent these unfortunate diseases. Nicotine and the upregulation of receptors. So nicotine is a very unique compound in the sense that it is one of the very few compounds that when ingested, the nicotinic cholinergic receptors actually upregulate. When comparing this to other drug administrations, such as opioids, SSRIs, benzodiazepines, or dopamine agonists, which all downregulate the receptors once administered. And this is typically what we see when the body is trying to protect itself from the overexposure to certain drugs or compounds. But again, nicotine is extremely unique in the sense that when it is ingested or administered, it actually causes the body to upregulate the receptors. So it's a bit weird how this actually occurs. So basically, as nicotine is attaching to the nicotinic receptors, the receptors are becoming desensitized, and the brain needing to control the intake of choline is upregulating receptors in order to attempt to do so. Over time, this causes a higher baseline amount of receptors, even when nicotine is not present. So this could potentially be playing a role in the addictive nature of nicotine. However, there are advantages in the upregulation of these types of receptors. This can definitely improve mood and increase memory, at least in the short term. Of course, there's a downside, which is that of increasing the addictive nature of nicotine. The more receptors you have, the more of a feedback loop is being formed. And there's also some therapeutic benefits, because there are some medications that are being developed that target the nicotinic cholinergic receptors, and having more of them will potentially enhance the medicine's effect. A very important factor to consider when implementing nicotine is that the benefits of nicotine work on an inverted U-shaped graph. So very basically, all this means is that the benefits of nicotine are very, very, very dose sensitive. So a little bit of nicotine can cause the benefits we're looking for, but once the dosage is exceeded, the benefits are no longer present, and the effects can actually become negative. So basically, the benefits of ingesting the right dose of nicotine are improved attention, improved working memory, improved reaction time, and increased focus and alertness. Higher doses tend to impair cognition, cause overstimulation, increase anxiety and irritability, and in some cases cause confusion too. So we've got to be very careful when ingesting nicotine. The right dose of nicotine, once it's attaching to the nicotinic cholinergic receptor, is causing the brain to release more dopamine, norepinephrine, glutamate, and of course acetylcholine. So low doses of nicotine potentially release the right or balanced amount of these chemicals in the brain, whilst too much nicotine can firstly cause receptor desensitization, cause overactivation of certain brain circuits, and potentially it can cause a neurochemical imbalance. And this is why once the sweet spot dose of nicotine is exceeded, the benefits are gone and it can actually have negative effects. So when it comes to practical applications of nicotine, for, of course, the health benefits, right? As we all know, there are various forms of nicotine ingestion. Smoking is the OG. Then you have vaping, you have nicotine gum, nicotine pouches, and nicotine patches. So first of all, the nicotine ingestion through smoking is completely different to, let's say, patches. The reason is nicotine ingestion through smoking spikes blood levels of nicotine ultra high, followed by a steep crash. If we were to compare this to a nicotine patch, the plasma level of nicotine is increasing gradually over time. It's not going to very high amounts, and then it is tapering out of the system gradually as well. So to wrap things up, I'd like to share my personal experience with nicotine. When I was younger, I used to smoke cigarettes, and I smoked for quite a few years. Luckily, I managed to cut them out quite a while back. And when this whole trend about nicotine and the health benefits associated with nicotine started to emerge, I was intrigued by nicotine once again, because I did remember having some cognitive benefits. So what I did was I did some research, and eventually I started using snus, which are basically pouches containing nicotine within them that you insert in your mouth, basically underneath your lip, and the nicotine is ingested that way. Eventually I had to stop using the snus, and I started using nicotine pouches instead due to legality issues. So the snus is kind of illegal where I currently live, and the nicotine pouches are not. So the difference is the nicotine pouches contain plant fibers within them, and they will have either tobacco-derived nicotine placed inside them or they would have synthetically created nicotine placed inside them. Now, what happened in my case was, over a 3-year period, I built up a tolerance, and I started to use these nicotine pouches like literally one after the other. And eventually I was unsure if I was still reaping the cognitive benefits of nicotine. So luckily I decided and managed to stop them. And I did this only about 3 to 4 months ago. The first thing I noticed when I stopped the nicotine was, at the gym, I felt stronger. I needed less recovery between sets, etc. So I was quite happy to keep nicotine aside and see what emerges from stopping using nicotine. And of course, there is a withdrawal period, but I must say that stopping the pouches was a lot easier than stopping smoking. Yes, I stopped smoking when I was way younger, with less sort of tools to deal with that accordingly. But I also think it's due to the nature or the delivery system in place when you're comparing smoking to nicotine pouches. So that, I believe, could play a role in the severity of the addiction. But anyway, stopped 3 to 4 months ago, feel a lot better, I would say. Now, when it comes to my advice regarding nicotine ingestion, first of all, you need to proceed with caution due to the highly addictive nature of nicotine. I would also advise against the usage of pouches. If you're actually going to utilize nicotine, you might want to consider nicotine gum at a very low dosage, or nicotine pouches also at the lowest possible dose. And it's important that you do not utilize any of the nicotine ingestion systems daily, because you will build tolerance, in turn build addiction, and in turn increase your dosage to a point where you're no longer getting benefits and you can potentially be causing harm. So if you are going to dabble with nicotine, you must proceed with extreme caution. Only utilize gums at the lowest possible dose, or nicotine pouches at the lowest possible dose, and do not utilize nicotine daily. Only utilize it when you're going through a period where you need extreme concentration, and keep it there. However, my honest advice is you're probably better off without nicotine. Yes, it is a cognitive enhancer, but the problem is it is so highly addictive that it will quickly push you out of the sweet spot when it comes to dosage related to cognitive enhancement. Guys, please let me know if you have had experience with nicotine yourselves. I would love to know about this. Even if you have any questions related to nicotine in general, I will attempt to answer them. But until the next video, onwards and upwards.